I guess if I were to ask you who is this famous scientist in here, even if I did not have information on the slide, you'd probably guess, right? It's really one of the most famous scientists. Okay, but you can see from this slide that outreach is quite old, right? We are doing it for quite some time already, and this Christmas lecture was almost 200 years ago. Now the purpose of this outreach forum that we'll have now is to discuss the outreach practices around the globe, because very often we meet for scientific meetings, workshops and conferences and discuss the most recent cool science, and although many of us are doing outreach in different countries, we rarely discuss the progress, outreach, best practices in outreach. And I think it's quite important to do that too. The other big challenge, I think, is that quite often older scientists like myself try to do outreach, and it would be young scientists like you, or most of you, who would be much more successful in doing that, because there is a smaller age gap between, say, high school students or middle school students and you. And so therefore, I think it's also important to involve students, graduate students, undergraduate students, and postdocs in doing outreach, not just keep it on shoulders of professors, but involve everybody. And this could help us to not only make this more fun process for everybody, including those high school students, for example, who could be engaged better that way, but also we could get an access to bigger masses, to more people, to more students in doing this. And so last year, so we started doing those outreach forums to discuss and brainstorm outreach practices around the globe. And so pretty much all ICAM summer schools had those outreach forums. And here you can see a photo from the summer school we had last year in Boulder. And actually this was very late. We finished around 11 p.m. And there are several students here who attended past summer school as well, and they can confess, they can tell you as well that this was the case. And people were not tired at all discussing outreach. They were actually quite excited about it. And we went around the room, we discussed how this is done in different countries. And although we started from sort of vaguely defining the concept, what is it, very soon we realized that it's done universally, in pretty much around the globe in many different countries. And so in here you can see one of the summer school students, Monishka Narayan, presenting a couple slides because she is originally from Fiji Islands, although currently a graduate student in Australia. And some of those islands will be disappearing, right? So if we do not really take care of the global warming and climate problems by doing good science, this could be a real problem. And those would be some of the first islands that will disappear, right? And so this is what she is presenting. People living on those islands will have to move somewhere, right? So this was quite successful, an example of outreach forum that we had last year. And so you might know that Professor Mark Warner is not only helping us to run this summer school, but also is running another event which is happening next door to us. And so there is a clicker question to you, because this event is for students, high school students, so let us ask this clicker question.
You have to read you have to read the rest of the because it's all
Oh, okay. Yes, only if the students get admitted to Cambridge University. All right, so we have 41 votes, 43, 45. All right, okay, great, I'll stop the system. So yes, indeed, this is a form of outreach, one of the quite important forms of outreach, because we really should care a lot about students, high school students, middle school students, because we want to attract them to science, engineering, and this is very important. So one more clicker question, which is a question to you. Here, I guess this will be quick, so just a couple more seconds. Okay, I'll stop the system. Not all votes are here, but just for the sake of time. Okay, so outreach, so you can see, by the way, we have students who come originally from 33 different countries participating in ICAM. It will be fewer countries if you were to count based on universities. But based on citizenship, it's 33 countries. And so you can see that in majority of places, the outreach is done in some of the forms. So now it's question to you.
How currently is currently?
The last question that my advisor will make me.
I don't know, it doesn't have to be like within last half hour, right? So, a year or so. All right, good, yeah. So I'll stop the system. Okay. Interesting. So some of you are doing outreach, but definitely, some not, used to be, okay, plan to be in the future, okay, well, good. So now, one of the challenges that I mentioned is scale challenges, right? Because if only professors were to do outreach, I say if Professor Warner would not involve high school students in helping him to do this form of outreach, it would be perhaps difficult to engage that many students, right? And so it's therefore, I think, important to involve graduate students, undergraduate students, postdoctoral fellows, but there is a need of some forms of involvement of students. And so one of them could be an engagement assistant, that just like many of you are doing research, being research assistants, so part of the time you could also do outreach. So let's see if that would be popular activity for you. So say if you were to be helping with doing outreach while being undergraduate student, some of your tuition could be covered, right, as a, payment for that service. If you would be a graduate student in the same way too. Okay, I'll stop the system. Okay, so C is most popular, A and B. Okay, depending on stipend, that's important too. All right, good. So now I mentioned already another challenge is that we need to make it fun for those students who will be working this in high school, so that they perceive better. And so the question is, could we involve something like Facebook that we very actively use for this summer school? For example, while you're supposed to listen to lectures, I see a couple posts on the Facebook appearing during that time. So how about using it for outreach? Actually, this is a clicker question from past year, which was asked by my co-organizer, Yao Wanhalamimar. And some of you, therefore, might know correct answer. So start the system. All right. So let's see A and B. Okay. So Amir, what do you think?
Quite feasible.
Okay, I see. Yeah. So Amir is our Facebook expert who helps to do a lot of things for the summer school. So great. Last year what we did was we simply asked different people to tell us a little bit about the different outreach related programs you have in the different countries and start from simply saying where you're from. But before we proceed with that, I would like to ask Professor Noel to tell us a little bit about outreach in University of Colorado and our Liquid Crystal Research Center and the overall importance of outreach as well.
Well, thanks, Ivan. So at University of Colorado, we have the Liquid Crystal Materials Research Center, which started around 1995, and so this this is funded by NSF through the MERSET program, which is Materials Research, Science, and Engineering Centers. So there are, in the U.S., there are about 24 of these centers across the country. And they spend these 24 centers about $50 million a year. I think. So of this $50 million a year, something like $7 million of it goes to outreach. And the MERSET program is kind of legendary for pioneering the active participation in researchers in outreach. So every center has is an outreach coordinator and devotes a significant fraction of its budget to outreach. And so these activities are like Yvonne just mentioned, sort of outreach to high school kids. So there's the kind of K-12 outreach, general population outreach, and then the other major part of this is diversity. So increasing the representation of all sorts of people as professionals in science. This for our center has become a really kind of a central activity in the whole operation. Something that everybody participates in, and I think really grows from. I think another thing that Yvonne mentioned that's really important is that sort of the youngest people in the center are the ones that are most effective at outreach. So the graduate student engagement is really important. We have for this in our center, well, in all the centers I say this is an organized activity. So we have an outreach coordinator who sort of organizes the program and goes around and recruits people so these grants are for 6 years. So each center, each award is for 6 years. So we're now in about the 5th. We're actually reapplying for renewal this August. So in the last 5 years, Christine has raised another $1.5 million for outreach. External grants from other agencies and other organizations. So this is a pretty serious activity, and as I say, it's become a really central part of what the center does. So that's kind of a sketch of what.
Yeah, and so just to kind of add to the remarks by Noel, so if you want to obtain any sort of funding from the National Science Foundation, as part of the proposal, you need to include not only the scientific impact of your work, right, but also broader impact, and typically that involves different forms of outreach. So it's kind of really an important activity, and I think it's important to be good at it, not only just do it. Right? I'm thinking that now we can perhaps go through the audience and let everybody interested in telling us a little bit about outreach in your countries and your universities, centers, institutes that you might be involved in, to share the experience and different cool, interesting forms of outreach. So a couple students present here participated in the past summer school, so they might be kind of ready, and everybody else can think meanwhile. So let's see, could people who have been at the last summer school raise their hands? Yes, okay, so who would like to start?
So concerning the general outreach or specifically about physics because, well, I'm not sure about physics, but there are like outreach programs. Well, I went to school in Iran, and I remember in high school there was, I think it still is, that like over a week during a specific week, so you can go to all the universities and research centers, and like they show what you will be, like if you go through any of this major, like in the end what will be a civil engineer, what will be an electrical engineer, and they give some sense of the way that you are picking for your career or for your education. And it's not only limited to high school kids, it also exists for middle schools. So, because once you want to enter, like, start your high school education, you should pick your another major if you want to go through mathematics and physics, or if you want to go through science, or if you want to go through literature and art and stuff like that. So that's why they have it in both levels. Yeah, it exists like 1 week over whole year. You can just go and check all the majors that you can pick.
So that's in Iran. How
Yes.
about your university currently?
I'm quite sure at case it does exist. I've seen that. I wasn't really in charge of it, but I'm pretty sure that my colleagues have been involved, and I think there is over a month or over 2 weeks, there are a bunch of students from, I think, specifically from Ohio. They just come to see the case, and they introduce the labs and everything in school before applying to this university. So I'm not really have more information about the case.
All right.
I'm also from Iran, it's the same. I just have a chance in Italy. I see sometimes that I'm working on the organic solar cell, that they just go to the kindergarten and they provide with the juice, with the strawberry juice that made the solar cell to make them interested to go through the science. So like an experience that they have.
Like, if I want to add a comment, in Germany I was a student before. I remember there is one night, or like every year, that like all the labs in the universities are open. I think in all the universities the same. Like, research assistants have to be in charge, and they just show really simple, experiments or devices that the student are gonna be working with if they enter any measure. So it's only one night over year, to my knowledge.
Yeah, actually a complete day normally.
Yeah.
So I'm in Würzburg, Germany, and it's a day of open door, we call it. Everyone can come,
Yeah.
mainly pupils.
All right, very good. So how should we proceed? Maybe let's just simply ask students who are interested in telling us some interesting aspects of outreach in their countries to simply raise a hand and introduce themselves. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Adil, and I can tell you a bit of my experience between Italy and United Kingdom. In Italy, there is some, at least more than Italy, actually, I would say Rome, because I just talked to my friend here, is Italian, and in each city there is an outreach program done properly. In Rome, at least La Sapienza, the biggest